Yeah, usually you never forget to turn on, so I thought you have.
I know.
Okay.
It's true. It's true. So Pema, do you know already something about tomorrow in the sense of how many people are gonna participate?
Sorry, Venerable, can you come again? I missed your.
Do you already know something about tomorrow? How many people are gonna participate?
I just counted yesterday, so we have about 10 to 11 people who will be in the bonus session tomorrow. Those who sponsored the course.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'll start. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, please. Yeah.
Hope you are all doing well. Last day of the official course. We still have a lot of ground to cover. So I hope we're going to manage that. Let's see. Yesterday we spoke about the self-grasping mind, and we had a look at how we identify with the self-grasping, or with the delusions or beliefs that are rooted in the self. So after that, we looked at how we can meditate on what we call the lack of inherent existence. And the main point in that meditation is that we are very, very clear about the object of negation, about the object that we are holding on to, but that doesn't exist in actuality. The more clear we are about that, the easier it is to say, oh, that is what is actually not there. That is what is not coming from the side of the object, but from my mind. And when we can see that, then it is easier to negate in the meditation. So after having seen how things do not exist, today we're going to look at how things do exist, because we all know that things exist, right? Some people, they say, oh, nothing exists at all. We are just in a kind of a simulation, but even if we are in a simulation, we still exist, right? We can feel, we can see, our senses are working. How they work is a different story, but we are here, we can talk. According to Buddhism, that is like a definition of that we exist. So that's not going to be the discussion, but how we exist is going to be the discussion today. So before we start, let's settle the mind for a couple of minutes. Make sure that you are in a comfortable position, relaxed, and bringing the mind to the present moment. All aspects of mind, also those who like to go back to the past, also those who like to jump into the future. You bring all these aspects to your body, to your breath, in the here and now. And then when you feel that your mind starts to settle down, try to generate a positive motivation. Try to think that we are here listening to teachings or being part of discussions on the nature of the mind. Because we like to understand better the nature of the mind, we like to connect with that in a more meaningful way, so that it can help us to develop our potential for wisdom and compassion, so that it can help us to wake up to our own potential, to the nature of reality. So that once we have reached that full potential, we can be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings. And then connect with your heart, with that place, the seat of the Buddha nature. Our main object of refuge. Because we have this nature, it is possible to become fully enlightened. Because we have this nature, it is possible to develop all our qualities fully. Because we have this nature, things can change, we can change. And so with that in mind, we take refuge. I go for refuge until enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By listening to the teachings and practicing the perfections, may I achieve the state of a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So yesterday we meditated on emptiness. And when we investigate, I'm just going to go straight in it, right? I hope you are awake and all your senses in your mind is open. So when we investigate the ultimate nature of things, when we meditate on emptiness, we are investigating the final mode of being of things, right? We are not investigating whether something exists or not. We are investigating whether something inherently exists or not. Inherent existence is a mode of existence. It is a mode of what we call in Buddhism, ultimate existence. And so with our meditation on emptiness, we are trying to investigate, does that nature exist or not? So we are investigating, does it exist ultimately? Does inherent existence exist ultimately? We are investigating the ultimate truth of the self or of any other object. And in order to do so, we call the conventionally existent object to mind. So when we want to investigate the ultimate mode of existence of the self, we call the self to mind, how the self appears to us. Then we analyze, how does it appear to exist? The self appears to exist inherently. And so then, after we have created a very good image of what that means, inherent existence, which is the object of negation, we're gonna apply reasonings with which we refute inherent existence. This is what we did yesterday. When we realize the lack of an inherently existent self, we simply realize that we realize nothing else. You know, we only realize that such a self does not exist. We realize what they call a non-affirming negation. We realize an absence, and there is nothing else that is in the place of the absence. There is nothing else that we observe. We only observe the absence of what we were looking for. So we can only say that inherent existence is not there. We do not realize the self, which is conventionally existent, because we are realizing the ultimate existence of the self. We are realizing the lack of inherent existence of the self. We realize that the self doesn't exist ultimately, it doesn't exist inherently. And the ultimate nature of the self is that it doesn't have a nature. It is empty of having an ultimate nature. So that is the ultimate nature of the self, is that it doesn't have an ultimate nature. That is playing with words, you know, but it is that is the distinguishing feature within the Prasangika, and when you go over it, it can be quite juicy when you do it like that. So the self is empty of a nature. Then, if we want to realize how does the self conventionally exist, we have to come out of the meditation that is investigating the ultimate existence of the self. Because we, as sentient beings, we cannot see the ultimate truth and the conventional truth of an object at the same time. It's impossible for us. Only a Buddha can do that at the same time. Due to our obscurations, we are not able to do that. So we can see the ultimate nature of things, maybe not we as ordinary beings, but when we realize emptiness, we can see the ultimate nature of things. But then in order to see the conventional nature of things, we have to come out of the meditation. Right, then we come out of the meditation, and then all conventionally existent things appear again to us. So how do they exist? If they do not exist inherently, we have discovered that. Inherently, there is nothing there. So then how do things exist? Things exist as dependent arisings. An inherently existent self would mean that the self exists independently of anything else. That doesn't exist, because the self exists independence of many causes and conditions. It exists independence on its parts, and it exists independence on by being imputed by the mind. So we talk about 3 levels of dependency in Buddhism. The one is being dependent on causes and conditions. And that applies to all phenomena that are impermanent by nature. Right? Not to permanent phenomena. Permanent phenomena do not arise in dependence on causes and conditions. For instance, uncompounded space, or also emptiness, they are permanent in nature. They do not arise in dependence on causes and conditions. They're always there, they don't change. So the dependency on causes and conditions is only for impermanent phenomena. Then the second level of dependent arising is that things depend upon their parts. The whole depends upon the parts, and the parts depend upon the whole. This applies to all permanent phenomena and all impermanent phenomena. So it means to everything. In the Svatantrika school, which is not the most subtle one, but the one below that, they define existence by saying that which exists in dependence on its parts. That is the definition of an existence. So that means whatever exists has parts. And then the most subtle level of dependent arising is that everything arises in dependence on the mind by being merely labeled by the mind. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through these three levels, and then we can see how we can apply that within the meditation, but also I'll try to give some examples how you can apply that outside of the meditation in daily life, you know, when you walk around and you start contemplating the nature of things. So we start with that things depend upon causes and conditions. So this is only about impermanent things. Impermanent things, you know, when we look at impermanent things, no, let me just talk about causes and conditions, not about permanence. So causes and conditions means that the thing that we are looking at or hearing or connecting with has not been there all the time. There was a moment in time that that thing didn't exist. True? So there was also a time that that thing came into being, that it was produced. Right? If I think about the table that I'm working on, there was a time that that table didn't exist at all. And then there was a time that it is a plastic table. So they collected whatever they needed in order to make plastic, and then the plastic table was in the making. And then I went to the shop and somebody bought it, and then I got it, and I can see that the table is decaying, you know, over time. Whatever phenomena that we have, whatever impermanent phenomena, it will decay. No other option. It will happen. And then there will be a time that that phenomena is not there anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. So this contemplation, we can do that on our cushion. You know, for instance, if you want to think about yourself, you can think about a time that you didn't exist. How was that? Your mom and dad, you were not there. You were not even in the make. You hadn't been made yet. Maybe you have brothers and sisters who are older than you. Maybe you're going to think about the time before your parents were married. Think about that time and what was happening in the world. You know, you were not here. And then at a certain point you came into being, and your body was growing in your mom's tummy. And at a certain point you were born, and you were growing and growing and growing, changing every day. Aging is there from the beginning, right? This is the best day in our life in terms of how we look. You know, we only decay every day more, and there is going to be a moment in time that we're going to die. And so then we can think about then what happens after we have died. Think about life continuing without us being here. And so you can do that with every phenomenon, thinking about the phenomenon in a timeline that didn't exist, and at a certain point in time it will fade out of existence, and then there is a period that it comes into existence, it remains for a while but is decaying in that time, and then it somehow fades out of existence. So it is helpful to do that on the cushion, but you can also do that when you walk on the street, when you know, whatever you have in your hands, you can contemplate that, these qualities. And then thinking about impermanent things, we can also contemplate that impermanent things are always composites of many different materials. It is never just one thing. Right, my plastic table that was before, it was oil. And then they did something with it, some chemical process, and it became plastic. But it is not just, maybe they've added some things, or so it is a composite. Plastic is not just one thing. Glass is not just one thing. It is a coming together of different materials. So if you start analyzing and taking them separate and think, oh, what was all needed? And then that all came together and it got transformed into what I'm working with today. Which means, you know, my microphone is not an inherently existent microphone. It was before, it was something else. If my microphone was inherently existent, it would be always a microphone, always. Could never change, could never transform. It would always exist, it would never change, it would last forever. So contemplating the composite, what is it made of? What kind of process was needed to prepare the materials for being part of this phenomenon? What will happen with the material when it decays? All right, we add all these materials together and then we throw it away. What will happen? Just, you know, as a reflection. And so applying that to ourselves, I already mentioned something, how we can do that, meditating on the body in terms of the timeline, you know, that we were not always here and that we also will not always exist. And we can look, you know, some people have big trouble with aging, with changing, they somehow expect that when they look in the mirror, they only become more beautiful or younger, and if that doesn't happen, they're very disappointed in their own look. You know, there is this irrealistic idea that we project onto ourselves, and then we expect that we start becoming like that, that we see ourselves being like that. And you can also contemplate the composite of the body. You know, what is the body made of? It started with 2 cells, right? And now we are what we are. How did that happen? Well, what was all needed for us to go from 2 little cells that we can only see under a microscope to what we are now? What did we all put in the body? What did the body do with it? You can think of the constant renewal of cells in the body and the constant shedding of dead cells. The moment we think, so I think when we do not think about impermanent, it is very easy for the conception of inherent existence to come in our mind in relation to objects. The moment we start contemplating the impermanence of that object, we counteract the holding on to permanence, right? Not exactly the holding on to inherent existence, but the holding on to permanence. We can think about the impermanence of the mind, you know, that the mind is changing moment to moment, that whatever arises in the mind, nothing of that can stay in the mind. Everything that arises has to dissolve. Positive emotions, negative emotions, all arise and then dissolve back. There is nothing that is today in our mind that was there too yesterday or last week or when we were little. Even the way that we look at ourselves, even we have the feeling there is the same self, but at the same time we see ourselves in different ways. Right? We think about it, it is the self. We believe it is the same self, but we think differently about it. This is the contradiction that we are having, that we are trying to address, right? In terms of the mind, we can think about all the different consciousnesses that we have, you know, the eye consciousness and the ear consciousness and the mental consciousness. We can think about the coarse consciousness and the subtle consciousness. Although it is the same mind stream, you know, there's so many manifestations of the mind coming and going. The mind is every day different, right? Or am I the only one who's having trouble creating a mind that is a bit more safe? I would like to have a stable mind that I wake up, that I know how I'm going to feel, and how, but it's not like that, right? We never know what arises in the mind. And so then you can focus even more on the self, you know, look at yourself that appears to be permanent or the same self and investigate, is it really the same? Is it the same self? Can it be the same self when it is changing moment to moment? Is that possible? That something is the same and at the same time is changing? If I have a car and it's my car, right? And I change the tires and I change, I don't know, the brakes and the motor, and in my mind, it's still the same car. I can change every part of the car, right? Maybe not in one time, but slowly, slowly over time, I change every part of the car. It's still, for me, the same car. It's weird, no? If I think about it, I think, oh, how do we do that? What is that? You know, but that is that conception of inherent existence that I impute upon the object, and then that object can change, you know. But that the conception is this, that stays on this, on the conception is still the same conception. This is my car. And so the self is imputed on independence on the body and the mind. But it is, we can say it functions as one entity with the body and the mind. So when the body and the mind are changing, the self also changes. Right? When I have mood swings, myself feels different. When I have pain in my body, myself feels different. Myself feels very much in how the mind feels, and the mind is influenced by how the body feels and what is happening in the body. So these are just things that you can contemplate in order to let go of that sense of permanence, you know, that we all have, and that is part of that conception of inherent existence. It is not a direct antidote, but it will take your mind away from reinforcing it again and again and again. All right, so then you have a little bit more space in your mind to maybe, I think so. I think we don't nourish it, we don't feed that conception. So in that sense, it will become easier to meditate on emptiness. So then depending on the parts, sometimes it is also taken together with mutual dependence, which is a little bit different. This applies to both permanent and impermanent phenomena. So when I look at the car, I see one car that is quite permanent and independent. When I focus on the parts, I see the parts of the car, and I don't see so much the car itself. I see the parts of the car. The parts of the car are much more related to, when I start focusing on the parts, I look at what is there. When I look at the whole, it is much more the imputation from my mind, which I'm observing, right? Our mind is projecting that image of one thing, of the whole. That is coming from the mind. So when I start dividing things into parts, and all the parts I can divide again into parts, you know, I break down whatever I'm looking at, and I say, I have this image of one car, but actually this car exists out of many, many, many parts. And all these parts of the car, they are all not car. There is nothing in the parts of the car which I can call car. But then I look at the whole and I call it car. So when I focus on the parts, the grasping at an inherently existent car becomes less strong. Right? So you chop it into pieces and you put it together again. Mutual dependence means that, you know, sometimes we say, oh my gosh, that is a really high skyscraper. And then we have to say, really high in relation to what? High in relation maybe to my length, to the people, but not high compared to the skyscraper in another country. Right? Or that lady is really fat. What do you mean fat? In relation to what? Compared to what? You know, and often we beat ourselves up with qualities that we say, I am to this, I am to that, I should be more that. Compared to what? You know? I am too messy. Compared to what? There are people who are much more messy than you. Right? You can see that on the television. People create an unbelievable mess in their house. That whole teams have to go in to clean it up. And you think you're messy, you know, maybe compared to your neighbor who is extremely tidy, but not compared to that person who is 10 times more messy than you. So when we compare, instead of believing that is really high, that is really big, that is really fat, that is really, we compare, then again, that conception of inherent existence, that conception that is really like that, weakens. So every time when you hear yourself say something like that, you interrupt yourself and say, compared to what? Or maybe in whose eyes? In whose eyes are you too messy? Who's telling you that? Why are you saying that to yourself? right? Because these beliefs, they make us tight, they make us uptight, because we hold on to that self, and we even think that self should be different than it is at the moment. Creates tightness. If we want to discover the nature of the mind, we need to relax. We need to be fine with who we are. We need to appreciate who we are. And then we can look into that things are depending on being merely labeled by the mind. And I hope that you get a little bit what that means. We have been spoken about it a couple of times. There is an object, and then our mind makes a projection of that object, and then we project that onto the object, and then that projection reflects back to us, right? So there are two things in the appearance. One is what we call the basis of imputation, which is the original object, the object that depends upon causes and conditions, the object which is a dependent arising. And then I project onto that an inherent existence, which is called the imputed object, which is the image of that one thing, and it is a name that I give. So for a phenomenon to exist, these two need to be present, not necessarily at the same time, but they need to be both present. I cannot just name something without having a valid basis of imputation, right? We say something is merely imputed by the mind. Some people think, oh, it is just in my mind, you know. So it is not real. It's just there, and nothing is there outside. But in Tibetan Buddhism, it says it is merely imputed over there. And to impute something over there, I need to have a valid base, independence on which I impute. If I have an imputed object without a valid base, that is like a non-existent. For instance, if I believe that the rabbit has horns, which is the common example, the rabbits have horns, the rabbits, that is an imputed object, the horns of a rabbit, but there is no valid base. There is no rabbit that has horns. You understand? I want to go with that to the self. So things are imputed means they are imputed on the basis of imputation. They come together, and that is the phenomenon. Every phenomenon has these two aspects. Our problem is that they appear to us as being one, and they appear to us as being the same thing. Right? So when we try, you know, what we of course would like is that we see that actually these are two different things. That we somehow get so clear what we impute, and that we take it away, and that we can see the object. And so this is something that we cannot do. Due to the obscurations in the mind, we are not able to separate them and see them together. Or separate them and see only the basis of imputation. The basis of imputation is actually, I mean, Lama Zopa, he says it is so subtle that we cannot see it. I don't know what that means, you know, because I also cannot see that. When we try to eliminate the imputed object, we also lose the object that does exist. And then we think, oh, it's not there. Nothing is there. So that is really difficult to do that, and even more difficult if you walk around, you know. But if you can, by thinking about how it works, you can get a better feeling for it, and you can definitely damage your belief in that something is that. Right? Because that is the problem, that we believe that what we impute, that is that. There is nothing in the tree that is tree. There is nothing in the car that is car, you know. Everything exists out of just parts that are all not the object. I find it quite fascinating. Right? All parts together, every part is not car, and then we call it car, and we believe it is a car existing from the side of the object. In the Chitta Matra school, they call this kind of phenomena, they call them other-powered phenomena. So they are not self-powered. Car is not self-powered. Car, the power of it being a car comes from other objects, comes from all the parts of the car working together, being collected in a certain way or put together in a certain way, functioning in a certain way. So if we are able to meditate like this and reflect like that, then we lose that concrete feeling and perception of the self and us of other objects. And then we can think, you know, if we contemplate the dependent rising of the body and the mind, we have this feeling, but I'm working and I'm earning my money, and so I can go to shop and I have the right to do this, and I am entitled for this and this and this, right? But if we start to realize, actually, you know, we are just a collection of a lot of cells here that I see as one thing, but actually there are just trillions of cells put together in a certain way with a lot of viruses and bacteria living inside, and maybe some worms, and I think I'm a clean human being, you know, a one human being. But in actuality, I mean, this is just a perception, right? I'm a collection of a lot of cells working in a certain way, put together in a certain way. My mind is same. I can think, wow, I'm so good at this and this, you know, I learned that myself, and I do not have to be thankful to anyone. But the more we understand that everything, every quality in us, every part of us arises in dependence on causes and conditions, and we start looking in these causes and conditions, none of them really comes from us. Have you ever done that? You know, if I think about my body and where my body started with 2 cells and what it is now, I am not able, that it all comes from something else, right? That doesn't come from me. That comes from food. And the food, most of us are not able to make, to create any food, to grow any food. We have to go to the shop. We depend upon others. We depend upon the farmers. We depend upon the shopkeepers. We depend upon the factories. We depend upon so many factors in order to sustain this body. And if you realize that and you're going to think about it, how many people are involved in sustaining our body, and how kind it is that they contribute to my existence. Only because of them, I can be here. And we can do the same with thinking about the qualities in the mind. You know, we can think this is coming from me. But whatever quality we have, we develop independence upon others. You cannot develop one quality in the mind just by yourself. True? If you think, oh no, but I know some qualities, you know, you have to tell me. Or maybe you want to investigate if it's really true that you did that all by yourself. There's nothing we can do all by ourselves. Even being at home by ourselves, you know, everything that we have in the home is not coming from us. Right? It's made by others, prepared by others. And so if in this life, if you start thinking about on how many beings our existence depends upon, and then we think, but this is not my first life, you know, I had many, many lifetimes since beginningless time. And so these qualities they have, some maybe were already in a certain form present when I was born or when I was very young, but they came about independence upon others in previous lifetimes. They didn't come out of the blue. Right? Nothing comes out of the blue. Everything arises independent on causes and conditions. And so then we can think, if we had numberless rebirth and numberless lifetimes in which I had a body which depended upon the kindness of others, and then I learned a lot in these lifetimes, and still I have qualities from that I developed in past lifetimes. I bring that to this lifetime. The kindness of others, it's like you can almost touch each and every sentient being in the universe. And then you can think or feel that maybe you feel that we must be connected to each and every sentient being in the universe. Although I don't know them in this life, although I don't have a conscious connection with them in this life, I do have a connection. I do depend upon them. We can do nothing on our own. And so from there comes the mind that says, I want to repay that kindness. Everything that I learn that helps me to improve, I'm going to do that so that I can repay that kindness. Right? And that is what we normally they say the bodhisattva, the sharp bodhisattva, they realize emptiness first. And then in dependence on emptiness, they realize that their life, who they are, they depend upon all sentient beings. And then in dependence on understanding emptiness, they can see that you can develop your full potential of wisdom and compassion. And then in dependence on that, they have the bravery to say, you know what, I'm going to do that in order to be of benefit to each and every sentient being. So the mind of enlightenment, the mind that wishes to become enlightened in order to be of benefit to sentient beings, is the mind that fully understands emptiness. It hasn't realized it directly, but it has very good intellectual understanding of it. So the more we meditate on the nature of the mind, the more we start seeing that, you know, it is possible to develop the mind. It is possible to develop all good qualities. It is possible to see the nature of reality. Then also the compassion naturally, you know, will start to grow. Because emptiness Emptiness makes everything possible. And because things are empty, they are dependent arisings. Right? Because things are dependent arisings, they are empty. These two go together in the Prasangika school. Things cannot arise in dependence when they have an inherent existence. Things can only arise in dependence when they lack inherent existence. If things would exist inherently, they cannot change. They would be permanent. They would be independent. They would be unitary. But because they are not that, they arise independence. Because they are arise independence, they have to be empty. Can you see that? And so that is called the king of reasoning in the Prasangika. Things do not exist inherently because they are dependent arisings. Oh, 9 questions in the chat. Go quickly to have a look. I'm so sorry that I didn't do that before. But I'm finished with my story, so you can ask questions. Can we do a longer question and answering on the bonus day? Sure. We can do that. Could you please repeat the 3 levels of dependent arising? These are things dependent upon causes and conditions, which refers only to the impermanent phenomena. The second level is that things depend upon their parts, which is for both permanent and impermanent phenomena. And then things depend upon being merely labeled by the mind. Oh, sorry, B already answered. I'm so sorry. Thank you, B. Why or how is dependency on parts not compatible with being inherently existent? If something would be inherently existent, it would be independent of anything else. If the car would be an inherently existent car, it wouldn't depend upon anything. It wouldn't depend upon its parts. If something would be I'm just giving you some reasons, right? You can see if that helps. If something would be inherently existent, then I should be able to find that thing within the parts. It should be findable in the object. That is what inherent existence means. I haven't gone there in the teaching because, you know, sometimes we think, oh, I can't find it, so therefore I realized it. But it doesn't work like that. But if something were to exist inherently, we should be able to find that thing between the parts. When we look into the parts, we should be able to find it. So if I think about a car, and I'm going to look within that thing that I call car, and I'm going to look for car, and I say, the door, is that a car? No. The brakes is not a car, the gears is not a car, the steering wheel is not a car. And then all the parts are not a car. And I take all the parts and I put them on a pile. Oh, I cannot find the car, right? So that means the car is not existing inherently in that object. I think something is inherently existent, then it means it does not have parts. It's true. If something were to exist inherently, it would not have parts. That doesn't mean, yes, it would not have parts. And so that's the meaning of inherent existence. Inherent existence is a non-existent, right? It's something that is not possible. But if it were to exist, it would be permanent. It would have no parts. And it would be independent of anything else. It would not even be dependent on the mind. So that would be if the car would exist inherently, there were no parts in the car. So we never have to change the parts of the car. But also the car would more or less from its own side let me know that it is a car. I do not learn that from the car. I learn that from other human beings. The car would exist from its own sight, which means that when I see the car, I know it is a car without anybody telling me. That is the meaning of inherent existence. I just don't get why. I hope you understand now, Stina. If something has parts, which part would be the thing? If it is the collection, then if some parts are replaced, would still be the thing. Would the parts of a car and a heap be a car? Is that an answer to Stina B? Yeah. To be an inherent existence would mean being as it is, permanent and never changing. No, it wouldn't be as it is, right? Because things are not like that. To be inherent existence means being permanent, never changing, not dependent on anything. That is true. As it is, I would take that one out, Paula. Right? Because things are not like that. Good. Any other questions? Don't tell me it was all that clear. Can also be difficult to even ask questions. You know, I don't know. I listened to these teachings for years, and I think it took me till maybe the first or the second year in the Madhyamika that I had the courage to ask questions. Before that, I could never formulate questions. But it didn't mean that I understood what was said. Nobody puts up the hand. I go to one question that was there from Alice. You asked a question a couple of days ago. You want me to answer that? You remember about death? You want me to talk about that? Yeah. So Alice asked, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but intellectually, I understand that we're all going to die. But emotionally, it generates a lot of fear in my mind. And what can I do about that?
Yeah, basically, I was saying that, like, yeah, although I accept that I have to die, I know that I will die, but emotionally, I can't accept it. So since a very young age, I'm always afraid of this disease, cancer. I mean, not only death itself, but I think more like the physical suffering. So whenever I feel like somebody, then I'm like, oh, maybe I have a cancer. Then I just rush to the doctor and do all kind of like blood tests, urine tests, scan. Of course, everything is normal, but it's just that fear in my mind. And I don't want to live my whole life like this. I want to get rid of this fear of death. But no matter how obvious it seemed to me that I will die, or I might or might not go through the physical suffering, but understanding on the intellectual level doesn't really help me to get rid of the fear on the emotional level.
So I don't know if this is true, right? It's just what is coming to my mind, and could be a possibility why you have the fear. When we have a lot of fear in the mind, well, first of all, there is a lot of self-grasping with what you are talking. But when we have a lot of fear in the mind, one cause of this kind of fear is, or I should say, fear itself can be the result of negative actions. You know, if we create negative actions, if we harm others, if we kill others, if we instill fear in them, right? They are afraid of what is happening to them. And they say that we ourselves also have an imprint in our mind, which is similar to the fear that they experience. And one day that fear starts to arise in the mind. And then we're afraid, you know, something's going to happen, something is going to happen. So that can be related to negativities. And if that is true, I don't know, you know, I would do purification practice and see if that is helpful, if that lessens the fear. Right? So then if that is the cause, and even no matter how much you think about death, it's not going to be the antidote to what you are experiencing. Right? But maybe purifying karma could help.
But if it's not that, I mean, I don't think that I have been doing a lot of negative actions.
How do you know?
Oh, okay. You mean maybe in past lives?
Yes. I mean,
okay.
I mean, in past lives.
Okay. And other than that, I mean, if for now, I mean, I don't have the opportunity to do any purification retreat, or then other than that, is there anything else I could help?
Well, you could generate every day regret and say, so what if this comes from me having instilled this kind of fear in other beings? And you regret that strongly. And then you say, I'm going to make sure that the way I interact with others is not going to generate any fear in them. You know, this can already be your purification. Every day you remind yourself that you're going to do that. Yeah, I'm not talking about, you know, I know that people are very limited in what they can do in terms of retreat. But you can make every day a determination. I'm going to make sure that people feel safe, you know. And if you keep giving safety to people, at a certain point it starts coming back and you start to relax.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, and I just want to add one thing, because we were talking about this inherent existence. I don't know if it helps, but for me, the only way that I managed to understand was from a teaching that says, like, basically you take a thin wooden stick, you put them together, and then you teach children that this is an A. So, but after a while, when we see those 3 sticks put together, we think that inherently the letter A comes from those 3 sticks, but we forgot that actually it's our mind that project the A-ness on those 3 sticks. They do not carry the A inherently in themselves. Yeah, so I just wanted to share this, I mean, in case it helps anyone to understand it better, because I find it hard to understand.
Yes. Yeah, Lama Zopa explains it with the A. Right? Yeah. So we have learned everything. I mean, I mean, if I walk outside, and I hear people speaking, I understand nothing. You know, there are just sounds, and I'm always amazed that I think for them, it's actually a language that is referring to so many things, and for me, it's just sound. You know, and they believe that what they're talking about really exists, but for me, nothing arises in the mind. Then you already can see, I don't know. That things are not exactly, you know, the way things are not at all. The way we think about it, it's just words, and it is just images that are rising in the mind and that we hold to be reality itself. Yes, Carol. You have to unmute yourself first. Wait a minute for
is it Carol or Carol?
Carol, yes. You see him?
Not me, sorry. Else and Carol.
Else.
Else and get. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No problem.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, does it work?
Yes, it works.
Okay, fine. I have a question about the South Tantrika.
The South Tantrika or the Svatasana?
The South Tantrika. The South Tantrika.
Okay.
I have a chart here and it says about the two truths.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Just I'm not sure if I have all that knowledge with me right now, but you can give it a
Okay.
try.
And here it says by the conventional truths,
Yes.
it says a phenomenon is unable to perform a function ultimately.
Yes.
And then it says e.g. that's for instance, it says any permanent phenomenon.
Yes.
And then by the ultimate truth, it says a phenomenon that is able to perform a function ultimately.
Yes.
That's the same, huh? Yeah. And it says any impermanent phenomena.
Yes.
And I would think it's just the other way around.
Yes. But you're talking about the South Tantrika school,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So they're all positing the two truths in a different way.
Yeah. But how do
So what they
mean?
believe, I tell you, what they believe is that the whole world with all the impermanent things, they are existing ultimately. That is how things exist. They believe in objective existence. They believe that what, the table that is in front of me, that is a real table. And what appears in my mind is just a reflection of actually what is really outside, what is really the table. I'm just reflecting it in my mind. Nothing is coming from my mind. The table is existing truly. It's a true table. So that is the ultimate truth.
But why is it the other way around then? And I don't still
But
get
this
it.
is a level of conception. If you believe that there is an objective existence, then that is the ultimate. And they say the objective existence is the impermanent world where all the objects are appearing. That is what is really true. The way I think about it, that is not really true. That is conventionally true. That is we just make an agreement that I call the table a table. That is a convention. But that's not ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is the functioning thing.
The ultimate truth is the thing.
The thoughts about everything is conventional truth because it is not real. I know it is totally the opposite way of the Prasangika, right? But it is. We all have this belief in objective existence.
Yeah.
And so for that, we studied the South Tantrika school.
Okay.
And then because they say, that the mind is reflecting and the mind is naming and the mind also has images in the mind, but the things itself, that is reality. Other than that, there is no reality. That is all made up by the mind.
Okay.
Right.
I'll just look it back and then I think it's a hard one for me somehow. The rest of the chart I can it's okay, but this one is
this one is difficult. Yeah.
somehow.
The Vaibhashika is, I think, easier. And they also talk about imputed things and but yeah, I don't know. These are all levels of our own mind, where we can function. And we have to look at all of them and refute all of them in order to get to the Prasangika school. Right. But then when we hear Prasangika, it makes so much sense and it is so easy and it is so natural and it is so, because it is like that. This is what Buddhism then says, because that is how reality exists.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Our last question, and then we'll do the meditation.
Thanks, Venerable. Yesterday, something came up in the class that I wanted to ask about or address, because we were talking about dementia as an example, just about how karma, and there's these causes and conditions that can lead to a certain consequence or a certain outcome. And I was wondering what is the view or the Buddhist view on blame and responsibility, and how can we, because I think like this concept for me, it's about letting go, or how do we let go of the conventional reality or the conventional experience of reality in looking at karma and looking at impermanence and things appearing as they are. How do we let go, and where does blame and responsibility lie in that process?
What do you mean with we have to let go?
Well, I mean, for me, I think, how far do you go? So we talk about, this event happened in my life, and it happened because of a certain cause and condition, or causes and conditions. I came into existence because, two people came together, and as a result of that. But then how far do you go back? Where do you put your finger and say, I have dementia because, I did this thing? Or
I think reflecting on karma, if I see how people who are grown up with the concept of karma, how they have somehow they can much better accept that things happen the way they happen, right? What we do when something happens, we cannot accept it, and we try to undo it. We try, in our mind keeps fighting, keeps saying, oh, if this has happened, then that wouldn't have happened. Or if this person hadn't done that, then this wouldn't have happened. So this mental engagement is not going to change the facts in no way. So it's actually totally useless. It's just disturbing the mind. It is just creating the illusion that if you keep thinking hard enough, you can still change something about what happened in the past, and it's not going to happen. Yeah. So if you have a very deep understanding about karma, then karma can just say, it happened. And this is where I am now, and then I go from there. There is no blame. Karma is not a blame. It is just a full acceptance so that we can let go of any reaction that we have to the situation. So I think in that sense, it's very helpful for the mind. Nowadays you find, I'm not sure if I should call them New Age or other kinds of spirituality, but they say you chose for this. I mean, I find it quite a harsh one. You chose for this. You came here voluntarily. You have asked for this to happen. This I find a little bit, for me, goes too far. For me, I think we are not in control. Things happen to us. But at the same time, we do have responsibility in the sense that we have created the causes and conditions for whatever happens to us. Otherwise, things cannot happen to us. We must have a relationship with that event, more than just being in that place. If we have not created the causes and conditions, we can be in that place, but nothing would happen to us. So we have responsibility that things happen to us. When you apply the law of cause and effect. So I think it helps to accept, but as Westerners, I don't know. I can still see that my mind is not that far that I can totally accept. I'm still fighting. I'm still trying to undo, things that I don't like. I think that deeper accepting karma might help to let go deeper. Some people, they find it very useful to say, oh, I chose for this, you know, I chose for these horrible parents that beat me almost to death. And I grown so much from that, and I learned so much independence on that. Yes, you know, you can learn a lot independence on that, but I don't think it is a conscious choice, you know. So I don't know if that.
I think maybe this is where I want the question that I really want to know the answer to is, so then how does responsibility work? How does it actually work?
I think responsibility works that you can say, this is where I am, without having any links to the past, any expectations to the future. You just fully accept, this is where I am. If we don't take full responsibility, you become the victim of the circumstances, you become the victim of the actions of other sentient beings. So that means that you create links with, right?
So responsibility is acceptance in the present moment.
I think.
Yeah. It's not I'm going to change the past and I'm going to change the future.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
You can still do many things so that the future becomes as good as possible. And you can still do things in order to heal things from the past. Right? So if I say,
I don't want to use the word.
Is accepting fully what is here present. You know, what is here in the here and now can be that I have still some wounds from the past that I haven't healed, right? But I have to take responsibility for that today. And I can do things about that today so that they're not going to hold me back in being the best version of myself. And so that I can move forward in my life. Right? If I'm going to be a victim and I don't take responsibility, then I say, oh, you know what this person did to me, and we will keep repeating, but nothing is going to change, you know? We cannot see a relationship to ourselves. We cannot see our own contribution to what we are suffering from. If I suffer from the past, it is because I have certain ideas. I have not let go of something. I am still holding on to something. Maybe I'm holding on to the expectation that I wish that I had a nice dad, right? I still have that wish. Why was my dad not a nice man? You know, if that wish is there, then I still become I become the victim of my own thinking, right? I have to accept it wasn't like that. Not with any hardship, not with any blame, but it wasn't a nice place to be, right? I think that is responsibility, kind of.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So with awareness and acceptance, then you have the freedom to act. Like the freedom to create better causes and conditions for the future.
Also that, yes. Yes, that's also part of the responsibility. I created the causes and conditions. So now I have to make sure that I don't keep doing that. If I don't like the results, I have to start changing my causes and conditions. Yes, but I think, you know, to be really responsible, there are so many aspects that you need to take care of. I don't think you can, you know, I don't think we can say, oh, you should be a bit more responsible. Responsibility is that we learn to see, oh, actually, this is related to my own mind. Oh, actually, I am having all these ideas and beliefs in my mind that is perpetuating the suffering that I went through, or that is creating the anxiety for things that are going to happen. These are all coming from my mind. To find them and to change them is not so easy, right? And we have these habits that we believe that other people and circumstance, you know, we have to change all that and say, no, this is life. These are all the bits of my life. These are all the bits of me. And what can I do with that? So that I have, so that I'm as much as I can in my own power. I don't know if it still makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Cool. So we're going to do a meditation as the last meditation of the course. And I thought to do a meditation on how we depend upon the kindness of others. Right? Doing any meditation on impermanence or on dependence, how things depend, you know, helps to break down that conception of inherent existence. Helps to weaken it. I shouldn't say break down. It helps to weaken it because we don't feed it. We feed the opposite. All right. Everyone good? So then make yourself comfortable for the meditation. Focus on the here and now, on your body. And if you feel that your energy is with your body, you can focus on your breath, either by observing the rising and falling of the abdomen, or observing the breath at your nostrils. And then think that everything that we have, everything that we use and enjoy, including with the things that we need to stay alive, are provided by others. Think about the last meal you ate and all the people who made it possible for you to have that meal. The farmers who grow the grains and vegetables, others who help to harvest it, the truck drivers who transported it, and people who worked in the factories and markets to process, package, and sell the food. So many people and so many months are required to produce just one plate of food. And if your diet includes meat and eggs and dairy products, then animals were also involved. Most of them probably experienced suffering in the farms where they lived. and some were even killed. We never meet most of the beings who provide our food, but we benefit greatly from their work. We could not survive without it. And while contemplating this, feel grateful to them and generate a wish for them to be happy. And the same is true for everything else in our life. The clothes and the shoes that we wear, the house or apartment we live in, the buildings in which we work, study, shop, and play, the books we read, the cars we drive, the music and the films that we enjoy. And also public services, water, electricity, gas, and so on. Contemplate how we are dependent on others for all these things. Appreciate the kindness of all those beings and wish them to be happy. And maybe your mind objects and says, hey, wait a minute. I pay for all these things, so I am helping them, doing a service for them. And that might be true. But where does your money come from? Did you have it when you were born? Either you inherited it, or it was given to you by your employer or customers for the work you do. In both cases, it came from others. And even if you have earned it yourself, you depend upon others for this to happen. The teachers from whom you acquired the knowledge and skills needed to get a job. Your parents who paid for your education, the employer who hires you, the clients who enable the company to keep running, and so on. Think about, is there anything that you can claim to be inherently, rightfully yours without depending on others? You might also think, oh, but these farmers and these shopkeepers and so on, they are not working out of kindness for me. They are working to take care of themselves and of their families. So they're not really kind to me. You know, but to counteract this thought, you can ask yourself, can I know for sure what is going on in other people's minds, what their motivation is? If you cannot, then you also, it's not fair to judge them. It is possible that the people who produce the things you use do have an altruistic motivation. And even if they don't, it doesn't really matter. Our ability to receive benefit from others does not depend on their motivation. For example, the sun does not have the motivation to benefit us, but we receive enormous benefit from it. Light, warmth, power, energy, for plants to grow and so on. Recognize and appreciate what others do for you. And then wish them to have happiness and only good experiences. And this type of meditation can make you very humble and appreciative of others. Well, you know, every person that you meet in the street, they might all be involved in helping you to get everything that you have at the moment. Without them, we would be nothing. We would not be able to be alive. And so then we can dedicate the merits by gathering all the positive energy that we have collected during this session, during this meditation. But we can also take all the merits from the whole course, and we visualize that all in the form of positive energy that comes to our heart, that collects at our heart in the form of white light. And then we can imagine that that white light starts to fill up our body and then radiating out through our pores into all the directions, touching each and every sentient being, wishing them all to be happy, to be free of suffering. And we can also wish that that nourishing of our Buddha nature, of the nature of the mind that we have done in the last 9 days, that the merit of having done that somehow continues that nourishment, so that you discover more and more aspects of yourself that are connected to the nature of the mind, or that help you to connect to the nature of the mind, so that you can develop that more and more, realizing who you are, your true nature. Which is full of love, full of joy, radiating out in all the directions. And I want to thank you so much for being here for the last 9 days. Some of you I'll see tomorrow. I wish I could all of you, how you said it? I wish I could see all of you tomorrow. I hope, Pema, that something like that was possible, but I don't know. And so tomorrow we'll talk about connection, disconnection in relation to the nature of the mind. I'll make something. I'll prepare for something. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable, so much. Yeah, on behalf of everybody here, the whole participant, and behalf of Tushita, I want to thank you so much for accepting, first of all, to do this course, and yeah, for giving this course. I think that was really good one, I think. Yeah, thank you so much, Venerable. And I want to thank all the participants here for your time and effort for being with us for last 9 days, and some of you we will see tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time and effort. And if you feel appreciative and found this course beneficial, then if you would like to, you can make offerings for Venerable Jamyang. That is deeply appreciated, because Venerable Jamyang is ordained, and studying and teaching is what she has been doing for so many years, and so she lives on the generous donations of students like you. So the donation will be deeply appreciated for her. So in order to make donations for Venerable Jamyang, you can use the same link that you used to make payment for Tushita for this course. You'll find that in the confirmation mail that you received when you register for this course. Yeah. Thank you everyone so much, and I deeply appreciate for all of your generous contribution for this course that helps us to sail through the pandemic and meet the monthly expenses, and also pay the local staff that we have around since Tushita is closed, and fundraiser courses are the only income that we have. So thank you everyone for helping us and supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.